Hey, have you guys ever tried to buy a new chain for your chainsaw and found out that there's a lot of questions that you don't know the answer to, like pitch and gauge and drive link count? That's what today's video is all about. I'm going to explain those terms, we're going to talk about saw chain, and I'm going to help you get the right chain the first time. Here we go. Hi guys, welcome back to B&B Farms, where our goal is to try and live with our land and not just on it. You know, this week brought another high wind event here to our part of Indiana, and as such, we have spent a great deal of time this week using a chainsaw and working on our saws and making sure they're ready to go. And I thought this would be a fine time to talk about choosing saw chain, because I know trying to get the right chain is a source of frustration for a lot of folks. So hopefully you guys can learn something from this video and make a more informed decision when it comes time to buy a new chain for your saw. All right, let's get into it. First off, I'm going to cut right to the chase. You know, I know this is YouTube and people like quick, easy solutions. So let me show you what I'm looking at here. So I've got a couple bars laid out here. This first one is a Carlton bar. Let me zoom in on that, see if I can't get that to show up. Yeah, that's pretty good. We've got some information we can glean right from this bar without doing anything else. We know it's a 20-inch bar because it tells us right there. It shows us the dimension, the length of that bar. We know that it is a 50 thousandths gauge. See, it's got a picture of the top of the bar. It's got that slot right there that the chain rides in. That's telling you the gauge of that chain is 50 thousandths. And right down here, it's got a picture of the drive link, A172. That 72 is the number of drive links in that chain. That's the length. I mean, you look at it and you say, well, I need a 20-inch chain. That's not really how saw chain is sold. It is sold by the drive link count. And we know that this chain is 72 drive links of 50 thousandths gauge chain. There's still one measurement missing, probably what that A1 tells us, but we'll talk about that here in a minute. Let's drop down to this Oregon bar that I took off. Oregon is a big chain manufacturer. You guys probably already know that. So it's got a picture of a drive link and it tells us 91. 91 is Oregon's code for a particular kind of chain. 91 chain will be 50 thousandths gauge and it is 3/8 low profile. And right here is the number 55. That's the length of this chain. This chain needs 55 drive links of number 91 chain. So you can see that we've identified a lot of information and never had to measure anything. You can take a picture of that, take this bar with you into the store, and someone knowledgeable can look at that. Actually, now you're more knowledgeable about it, and you can look at it and say, this is the chain I need. All right, so that's the down and dirty version. Get you in the store, get you out, pretty good chance of getting the right chain. But let's delve a little deeper into what those numbers mean, the pitch, the gauge, the drive link. And I'm going to take you inside and I'm going to show you my setup for making chain and sharpening chain, and we'll do some measuring. A couple aspects of saw chain that I'm not going to talk about today would be the types of cutters on the saw chain. You know, you hear chisel, semi-chisel, safety chain. We're not going to dive into that today, but if you have questions about that or you'd like to see us make a video about that, we can do that. Drop us a line down in the comments, ask your question, let us know what you want to see, and we'll make a video about that too. All right, let's get back to it. All right, guys, here's my saw bench. You may or may not know that I did this line of work for many, many years. I've made thousands of feet of saw chain. I've got the equipment to make chain, sharpen chain. So yeah, I'm pretty experienced on it. Let's get in here a little closer and hopefully I can show you some of this. This is a piece of Oregon chain. And remember, we looked at that bar and it was telling us that we needed 55 drive links of number 91 chain. Well, since that's an Oregon bar and this is Oregon chain, you guys see that number 91 right down there on that drive link, stamped right into it? That makes it really easy. This particular bar will tell you exactly what you need. All right, let's get some measuring tools out. Take a closer look. So when you hear someone talk about saw chain and they mention the gauge, what they're referring to is the piece of the chain that slides down in the chainsaw bar. You see that kind of a semi-triangular hook-shaped piece at the bottom right there with the hole drilled in it? That is a drive link, and how thick that is determines a chainsaw's gauge. So let's see if we can get this strapped out here on this bench and we'll take a measurement. All right, we've got our chain upside down with the drive link pointing up. Let's measure how thick that is. Get down in there, make sure we get a really good measurement. That drive length is 50 thousandths thick. So this is 50 thousandths gauge chain. And that's all that measurement amounts to. That's all the gauge is how thick is the drive length. How about the pitch? We'll look at that next. So if we know that gauge is the thickness of our drive lengths, right there, well, what's pitch? Well, pitch is a measurement between every other rivet, or every third rivet. Like say if we measure from the center of this rivet, we'll skip this one, and we'll go to that one. Every other rivet, if you measure from center to center and divide that in half, that will be the pitch. And that determines the sprocket spacing to make sure that when you put that chain on the saw, that it drops down in your sprocket and doesn't try to bind up or ride up. Very important measurement. I'm not going to measure that because we're never going to get it right just doing it by hand. But yeah, a common pitch would be 3/8, 3/25. Those are probably the most common pitches that you're going to run into on a homeowner or a farm type saw. So yeah. Every third rivet, center of this one, skip the next one, to center of this one, this measurement right here. And since I happen to know that this is 3/8 pitch chain, this measurement will be 3/4 of an inch from here to here. But that's all that refers to. All right, a real important caveat here on this chain. We talked about the differences between pitch and gauge. Well, I've got two chains sitting here, one quite a bit bigger than the other, that's visually apparent, but both of these chains are 50 thousandths gauge and 3/8 pitch. Like these drive links are 50 thousandths wide on both of these chains, and the distance between every other rivet, here and here, and here and here, is 3/8 pitch on both of these chains. The difference is, you know, physically the size of the cutter. So if you just go in and say, I've got a 3/8 chain, 50 thousandths, they're not going to know which chain you have. This is what's known as 3/8 full size. This is what's known as 3/8 low profile. So it should be readily apparent just from looking at it which chain you have, but yeah, keep that in mind. We've talked about pitch, we've talked about gauge, we know what they are. What about drive link count? Well, as I said before, drive link is just how long the chain is. It's easy to say, or it's easy to think that, well, I need an 18-inch chain. That's not really the case. That chain's not really 18 inches long. The drive link count is what determines the chain length. And I'll show you how to get that. It's literally just counting the drive links. So take your chain. I'm going to hold this chain. I'm going to select a drive link. I'll select this one right here. And I'm going to hold that chain. And then I'm going to turn it to where two drive links are directly across from each other. Makes it easier to count that way. I can just go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, etc., all the way down to the bottom of this chain. Add in that one link that I'm pinched onto, holding onto up here, maybe a one link at the bottom. That will give you your drive link counts. And with those three measurements, pitch, gauge, and drive link count, you can identify, which chain you need. So probably the easiest way to establish the pitch and the gauge of your particular saw chain, if the bar isn't marked or if you can't read it, is to buy a chainsaw tool. It's a little plastic tool that will establish the pitch and the gauge of saw chain. And if I can find one on Amazon, I'll put a photo up here and I will drop a link to it in the description. I had one when I first started out, but over the years and the thousands of feet of chain that I have made, I don't need it anymore. I can look at a chain and tell you what it is. But this particular tool will enable you to, no guesswork. You can tell exactly what chain, what your pitch and your gauge is, and then you can count the drive links and you're there. I've got 4 spools of chain here behind me. If you go buy a chain today, it's going to come in a cardboard box or maybe a clamshell package. But in the old days, this is how it used to be done. And I'm betting you can find an independent small engine shop or a chainsaw shop somewhere, and it's probably still done this way. Chain didn't come pre-packaged. It came in 100-foot rolls, and you broke it and riveted it back together to make any size chain that you want. Now, what's the advantage of that? Well, say that your chain, chain wears, it gets loose. Now, I am of a firm opinion that if your oiling system on your chainsaw is working correctly and you don't abuse your chain, that it probably won't stretch much, but it might stretch a little, especially on an older chain or an older saw. And maybe you run out of adjustment when you go to tighten that chain on the bar and you can't get it tight anymore. You can bring it to me or someone like me with these tools, and we can take one drive link out. So instead of that 55 drive length count like we saw earlier, now it's got 54. That shortens the chain, lets you run your chain adjuster all the way back in, and you can keep cutting. What if you buy a chain that's got the right pitch or the right gauge, and the right gauge I should say rather, for your saw, but it's too long? Again, I can take links out of it and make that chain, maybe a 20-inch bar fits your 14-inch bar, as long as the pitch and the gauge are the same. So that's the advantage to having these tools, is you can do custom chain work, make any chain you want. All right, let's get started. So for these two chains we're going to make, I happen to know exactly what we're looking for. We need 22 LP, which as you can see from the tag is 325 thousandths pitch and 63 thousandths gauge. You can see it right there. And the chain count, or the drive link count, is 81. So we're going to spool off 81 drive links. We're going to put this chain together in a loop. All right. I should say that they make a chart that you can lay on your saw bench that has a true to scale reference of a saw chain, and you can just lay this chain out on it and it will measure that for you. But I've wore out so many sets of those that I finally just fell back to just counting the drive links. It takes a while, but you know, I'm not in that big a hurry. $81. You always want to mark that number 81 drive link, but it's terrible when you forget where you're at. There it is. You see that we have broke that chain. Now we just need to put it back together. To put it back together, we're going to need a new side panel and a new side panel, like a cover or plate. Right there's what they look like. This one has got the raw rivets on it, and there's the tie strap that we will use to hook it together. Here are the two ends that we need to join together. So we need to get our new tie strap, put it together, right, like that, like that. And then we'll put the strap on the side, which is right here. All right, so that whole thing is sandwiched together. Now we need to spin the rivets to tighten it up. We'll get it nice and centered. Tighten that up. And as we tighten it, we're going to turn this crank handle. That mashes that end of that rivet out. Okay, back off the pressure. There's one done, or at least started. Now we'll try the other one. Bring you in a little closer. I'm going to tighten the anvil and start spinning it. Just keep tightening that anvil to compress that rivet and mushroom over the end of it. That's how this works. All right, back that up. Go back to the first one. I'm right-handed and I'm doing it left-handed, so it's taking me a little longer. Just keep tightening that anvil and cranking that crank handle, mushrooming out that rivet. That one's done. Go back to the second one a little bit more. There we go. There's what you end up with. This is our new rivet. We've spun it in there. It looks just like it's been there all along. Now we have a complete loop of chain. Well, there it is. Probably more than you wanted to know about saw chain, but hopefully it helps you get the right chain the first time you go to the store. And that was my goal here all along, is just to share some information, maybe make things a little easier. If you like what you saw here today, maybe drop us a comment, let us know, share us with your friends, maybe even thinking about hitting that subscribe button. We'd really appreciate it. Well guys, it's 95 degrees out here today. I've got some Red Diamond Sweet Iced Tea. I'm gonna go get on the lawnmower, so yeah, wish me luck in that regard. In the meantime, remember to get outside and enjoy this hot, beautiful weather that we have. Be nice to one another, and I'll see you on the next video.